Okay, Lori, you are here.
Yes.
Gary Hutter.
Here.
Thank you. I think I see Akila for Heather Ashley Wynn.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Emily Barron. Emily is not here. Ross Blackketter.
Here.
Thank you. Jerry Borcherding. Jerry is not here. Mitchell Cameron. Okay. Will Conley. Bob Day.
Present.
Thank you. Tom Godala.
Present.
Thank you. Dan Gibson. Dan is not here. Stevie Greathouse.
Here.
Thank you. Greg Haley.
Here.
Thank you. All right. David Harrell.
Here.
Thank you. I think I just let in Emily Barron. Can you confirm that you're here? I'll come back to her. Mike Hodge.
Here.
Thank you. Cole Kitten.
Here.
Thank you. Ed Collins for Carts.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. All right. Nadia for Sharmilla.
I'm here.
Thank you. John Nett.
Here.
Thank you. Kathy Stevens. I see Kathy is logged in, but if you could confirm that you're here, Kathy.
Did you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Jeff Prato.
Here.
Thank you much. And we have Oscar Solis for Mike Sexton.
Here.
Thank you. Next we have Eric Bullock for Rob Spiller. All right, we'll hold on Eric. Charlie Watts with Travis County.
Here.
Thank you. And Tom Yantis.
Here.
All right. Thank you so much.
Do we have a quorum, Emily?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then Chad, I'll let you start us off on item number 2.
Thank you, Lori. So for the election of officers, a nominating subcommittee was convened. I will turn that over to Cole Kitten, who is on that committee, to report the results from that. Cole?
Hello, Cole Kitten, Austin Transportation. Bob Day and Dan Gibson and I exchanged emails in early January and all agreed that Lori Moyer could remain chair and Gary Hutter remain vice chair. And that's what we all agreed upon.
So, well, I know Gary and I appreciate that a lot. No, we both agreed that we would continue on. So, Chad, do we want to do a formal roll call on this? Or are we good with just ayes and nays?
Yes, we do need to have a motion and a second on that.
Lori, this is Mike Hodge. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the nomination committee's recommendation for officers.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
This is Bob Day, second.
Yeah, you can just ask if anyone is opposed.
Yeah, so we'll do all in favor, say aye.
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 And anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none. We're good, Chad?
Congratulations.
Very good. Yep.
Thanks.
All right, I would only do it if Gary did it, so, you know. that's the way it goes. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Our next item is approval of the October 18th meeting summary. Do I have someone ready to make a motion for approval?
This is Ed Collins.
Lori?
For approval of the minutes
To approve.
of the meeting.
Okay. Did someone have a question? And was there a second on that?
David Harrell will second.
All right, thanks, David. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, anyone opposed or? All right, assuming none. One thing, when I read through these, when we had this discussion in October, we talked about trying to achieve 2 meetings in person in this coming year. And they were going to be at locations other than CAMPO's office. So what we'll need to think about going forward is if some folks are ready to or have a desire to host the TAC meeting, let us know and we'll determine when to work those in. I'd completely forgotten that we had that discussion. So, all right, item number 4. Brian, discussion on federal performance measure target updates.
Right, thank you. This item is to just discuss the federal performance measure target updates that we do on an annual basis, and just kind of to remind the TAC that we set these regional targets on an annual basis, typically depending on the performance measure. But this is part of the Transportation Performance Management System, which is a federally mandated strategic approach that really came out of MAP 21, which is basically just using a system of information to inform our investment and policy decisions towards achieving national performance goals that have been set by Congress. So setting the regional targets is just part of that system. And then we also utilize the TPM process for such things as our performance-based project selection criteria that we use. We also monitor our investment progress and the impact. And that's something it's really kind of getting going now, and we'll measure, performance over time as well. But everything that we do also gets incorporated into the planning products, including the TIP and the RTP, as well as studies that we undertake as well. So everything really kind of takes this, strategic performance management approach to planning. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So just to remind everyone that Congress set the performance measure goals in these 7 areas. That includes safety, infrastructure condition, congestion reduction, system reliability, freight movement, economic vitality, environmental sustainability, as well as reducing project delivery delays over time. And so the goal areas set by Congress go through the federal rulemaking process with FHWA and the federal and FTA as well, Federal Transit Administration, where they set the actual goals and the performance metrics that are used with which we set our targets. So once those have all been set in stone at this point, I don't think any more are going to be coming out. It was kind of an iterative process, but basically once those rules are in place, the state DOTs as well as the transit providers set targets within those performance metrics. And then the MPO as well sets targets to adopt for the region. And then we take those and then we incorporate those into our long range plan as well as our transportation improvement program as well. We go to the next slide. So this year so these are the performance measures that we do have right now. We have the performance measure in safety, like on the roadway side, we have safety, which is PM1, infrastructure, PM2, system performance, PM3, and then you've got the individual metrics that you see listed underneath. And then on the transit side, our transit providers in the region, which include Cap Metro, the city of San Marcos, and the city of Round Rock, basically recipients of FTA 5307 formula funding, have to set TAM targets as well as transit safety targets. And so on an annual basis, we do set safety targets for on the roadway side as well as the transit side, and then transit asset management is also updated annually. We updated PM2 and PM3 last year. Those don't have to be updated every single year, but we will usually follow suit with TxDOT. They decided to do a midway look at their PM2 and 3 targets and set those, calibrated those last year. And so that's why we adopted those last year, but we're not doing that this year. So for the safety, you'll see anything that's in light blue, that's a target decrease from the previous year. You can see the previous year's targets in the report in your background materials. I mean, we still need to update a few things in the background report itself regarding transit. We did receive a few more since that went out to the TAC, but these are the updated numbers here on this slide. But as far as safety, you can see the previous year's numbers in the report that's in the background materials. So the number of fatalities and the rate of fatalities and serious injuries is going down. The number of serious injuries, the number of motorized fatalities and serious injuries is expected to go up. And that's because our population is increasing in Texas, which has been the case every single year. But as the population goes up, basically the proportion of those fatalities and injuries is going down. So that's we're doing, that's a good thing, I guess, that those numbers are going down. I guess obviously they are. But one thing I do want to remind everyone that is a 5-year rolling average. So every year that we update this, we're using the most recent year's data is getting incorporated into that 5-year rolling average, and the oldest year is falling off. And so this number is getting calibrated every single year, and it reflects that. And also with safety, the Texas Transportation Commission also did set the Road to Zero program, which looks to have fatalities by 2035 and then completely eliminate road fatalities by 2050. So that number is still, these numbers that the state adopts is being pushed into these targets. And then one thing I do remind everyone is that we do recommend that we adopt the state's targets. All the MPOs in the state are currently doing that. Eventually, I think as the system matures and we have enough information, we may eventually be able to start setting our own regional targets based on the information that we have. That kind of goes into the concept that Neerav is going to be talking about later about the performance measures in the dashboard and things like that. But as the system matures and we have that capability, that may be something we'll look forward to in the future. But right now, we are recommending just adopting these states' targets. And then transit asset management, the only changes there are that the rail percentage with rail and performance restrictions has gone down to 0. It was previously 1%, and that's only Cap Metro's target because they are the only ones with rail under their jurisdiction. And then transit safety targets, the only change there is that the mean distance between major mechanical failures is being reduced down from, I think it was like 25,000 miles down to 17,200. That's because last year we didn't have Cap Metro's numbers, but we have rolled those in. And so we were averaging out the city of San Marcos, the city of Round Rock, and Cap Metro's numbers now. And that's why the number is being reduced. And that's because Cap Metro has a much larger system and a much more mature fleet. So that number has gone down a little bit, but they do all have the same rate of injuries and rate of safety events. I don't have number of fatalities or number of injuries yet from those entities, but if that changes in the future, we'll be making that recommendation. So that's the update on the target updates. Next steps, we're going to be taking this to the policy board as an information item and discussion. We'll be bringing it back to the TAC next month for and asking you all for a recommendation, and then we'll take it to the policy board to adopt. And then after that, we do incorporate those into our transportation improvement program as well as the long range plan. And so that concludes the presentation on that item. Appreciate it. And if y'all have any questions about these targets, please let me know.
This is Bob. I got a couple of quick questions if you have a moment.
Yeah.
First, a question of pure ignorance here. On your slide, what does ULB stand for on the transit program?
That's a usable life benchmark.
Okay. Second is, it would be helpful, I looked through the background material, and it would be helpful to have data presented that said, okay, this was our target in 21, and this was the number that we actually have. I saw targets, but I didn't see actual data.
Okay.
And I may have just missed that, but I think it would be at least entertaining to, if you're going to have a target, to see what did we achieve, as well as setting the next year's target. Thank you.
Good point. I'll see if I can get that information from TxDOT and then extrapolate the region out of that. Hopefully I should be able to, so I'll at least be able to inform that a little bit.
I would be surprised if you didn't get that question from the board.
Yeah, no, and I think I got it last year too, actually. So that's a good point. I'll definitely see if I can get that incorporated in the report. So, thank you.
Any other questions? I had one, Ryan. How is the travel time reliability calculated?
I will need to get back with you on that. I can follow up when we send out the slides. I can get that information.
Okay.
You asked me last year when I was doing a deep dive on this. I could have answered it.
Yeah, it seems like we talked about it, but I can remember when I saw this again.
I know it's peak travel time. It's basically the percentage of time.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember it's how long you think it should take it versus how long you actually, are able to achieve that. But I just didn't remember what the calculation was. So
yeah, the actual formula I'm trying to think, I don't remember, but I can certainly get that and provide that to the TAC after this.
All right. And so no one else has any other questions? And I want to make sure, Ryan, you take this to the policy board and then it comes back again to the TAC next time for approval or recommendation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I do. Cole Kitten, thanks for that last clarification. I did want to make sure that it was coming back for recommendation next. But I guess I had a comment as far as what we're able to do within this month that passes regarding those safety performance measures. It seems like it may be acceptable in the region to see an increase in number of serious injuries and fatalities. But I want to make sure that instead of CAMPO kind of adopting TxDOT's performance measures, we actually, as a region, have a chance to talk about what those numbers mean, and if we think that that's acceptable for the MPO, or if we should always choose targets that actually decrease the number.
That's a good point, and I think that normally does come up at the policy board too, is what these numbers actually mean and what we can do about them. And Vision Zero obviously always comes up as well. And I'll see if I can pull out our numbers too, specifically out of these rolling averages, because these are statewide target numbers, and I can certainly offer that comparison for what part of our region contributed to that number, and that may kick off that conversation as well.
Cole,
So this is actually, that was discussed a fair amount the last time we brought, I guess last year when we brought the measures forward. One of the things that's happened since then is the Texas Transportation Commission formed a safety work group. It's got 5 or 6 of the 23 MPOs on it, and then the two TxDOT deputy executive directors are on it. 2 of the TxDOT commissioners, Commissioner Ryan and Commissioner New. I'm leaving out somebody, but the work group was formed because TxDOT was concerned, one, that the numbers didn't seem to be going down at all, but more so when we were really at the worst of the COVID and we weren't seeing any travel, that we actually saw fatalities go up. And that wasn't just Texas or Austin, that was pretty much everywhere in the country we saw that. So the work group is supposed to be trying to come up with other strategies we might use to see if we can start using a different trend line number. But we've only met once so far, and we're supposed to meet again next week. But that'll be something I'm briefing both the TAC and the board on as we go forward.
Okay, anybody else have any questions on this? All right. Yeah, Ryan, it would be good if whatever additional information you could get us before the next TAC when we vote to recommend this, because I do think it's on a lot of our policy makers' radar, particularly on the safety side. So thanks for the presentation, and we'll go to item number 5. Upcoming short-range planning activities.
Yes, thank you. So this item is really, we just have a lot going on this year. And so I wanted to kind of take this opportunity to kind of brief the TAC on everything that's going on, both currently and kind of down the line. I feel like I've been getting a lot of questions lately. So I wanted to address those and really kind of get an opportunity for the TAC to, if you have any questions about anything specifically, we can talk about them here. So I'll probably do a couple of slides and then ask if there are any questions and go forward from there. But the first thing is really the spring amendment cycle is starting up. This is our regular amendment cycle that we do twice a year. I feel like everybody on the TAC is probably familiar with that, but we have our online application that's available online, and you can submit an amendment request at any time really. So we're going to kick off the spring amendment cycle basically in April and May. We'll do the public hearing in April and then ask for approval in May. But the cutoff date so that we can get everything reviewed and taken care of is this Friday, January 28th, 2022. And that's so if you need an amendment, and this is only for projects that are currently listed in the 21-24 TIP, or this is the last amendment cycle basically for this particular iteration of the TIP. So if you have any changes that need to occur for this specific TIP, please submit that by the end of the week on that online application. Hopefully it won't take long, but if you have any questions or concerns about that, please let me know. And yeah, so that's the spring amendment cycle for the TIP and the RTP. If we'll go to the next slide, please. So kind of one of the bigger things that's going on is that we are doing our, every 2 years we update the Transportation Improvement Program per federal law. So we have currently we have the 21-24 Transportation Improvement Program, but we are due to adopt the 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program by this May. And so we're currently in the development stages of that. You can use the same form if you need to submit a project for the next iteration of the TIP. You can submit that through the online amendment application. And if you could submit those for inclusion in the initial adoption, the cutoff date for that is January 28th, 2022. A couple of things I wanted to point out about this particular TIP, and especially the development of it, is that we're not doing a concurrent call for projects. I know when we did the 2019-2022 call for projects, that was concurrent with the development of that particular TIP. So for this project, for this initial adoption, we're not having a concurrent call for projects. And I'll talk about the upcoming call in the next slide. But basically, if you're submitting a project for inclusion, it does need to have committed funding from federal, state, or local sources. A couple other points I want to bring up is that if you have a currently funded project that's in the current TIP and it's in fiscal years 23 and 24, we will automatically roll that over. So you don't need to do anything or resubmit. We'll just automatically roll that into the new TIP. And then as far as schedule goes, we're going to be spending basically February and early March doing QA/QC on everything that was submitted. For this TIP, we're expecting the federal programs from TxDOT, Cap Metro, City of San Marcos, City of Round Rock on the transit side, and then any other projects that were previously funded through federal sources, like those that were funded by the policy board previously and those that have been refunded recently as well. So that we'll have more information on this going forward, but we'll be doing QA/QC in February and March. And then we'll be going out in April for public involvement, including the public hearing. And then we're going to be asking for adoption in May. And so in your background materials as well, there is the STIP. There's a Gantt chart for the 2023-2026 STIP timeline that's provided by TxDOT, TP&P. So that kind of gives you kind of the full picture of that. But we're looking to have that adopted by the end of this year, or not soon, by May, excuse me. And then we'll incorporate that into the statewide program in June. So does anybody have any questions about what does or does not need to be submitted for the TIP or anything like that? I feel like that's normally where the questions come in. So I just wanted to ask if there are any questions about that particularly right now.
Lori, before you open it up to questions, one thing I did want to clarify, and Ryan got it part of this. So projects that were or that are in the TIP but were deferred as part of the CapEx agreement, those projects will roll into the TIP. You don't have to resubmit those again. They're going to get rolled in because the board's approved those.
All right, Cole, did you have another question?
Yeah, it was just to make it clear as day, projects that are currently in the TIP will roll over into the new TIP without submitting an application.
That's correct. Yeah. So any of those that are still deferred, like Ashby was mentioning, they're in the project development list, and then when they get refunded, they'll be pulled into the individual listing, but they will stay in the TIP in that regard. And we're expecting to refund those later. But anything that's currently listed, individually listed, I think I got an email right before this meeting, Cole, about like the Redbud Trail. That's currently in the TIP. That should roll over if the fiscal year falls into the fiscal years of the upcoming TIP. So anything in fiscal year 23 and 24 in the current TIP will automatically be rolled over. So I would encourage anybody to take a look at the current TIP if you have a project in there that for some reason is not in one of those fiscal years but needs to be amended like from the fiscal year to the one that's included in that program. I would encourage you to do that this week and let me know. So.
Hey, this is Jeff Prado with City Kyle. I'm relatively new to this group, and I'm just trying to learn what all the city and municipalities need to do to be a part. As far as this transportation improvement program, what information do we need to send, and how should we send it, and who should we send it to for this plan? Can you give me a rundown on that?
Yeah. So I mean, there's an online application to be amended into either the plan or the TIP. If you need to do that. And it's got, all the basic project information on basically on the funding and the costs and everything like that. That's all through that online application. You submit that in, we review it, and then, process it at that point. And so that, I think the amendment policy and everything has got links to those applications, but they're also available online as well. But that's what that process looks like. And one thing I also meant to mention is that, projects do have to have committed funding, but, as things do get funded in the future, like we always do, I just want to remind everybody that we amend those projects as they get funded, committed to them. So any projects that get funded through some discretionary grant program through FTA or FHWA, as Project Connects moves through the capital investment grant program, as those projects get committed funding, from those federal sources, we'll be bringing them back to the board to be amended into the TIP. So that's just an important point to make, because I think over these next, from 2023 to 2026, there's a lot going on in this region. So as those things get funded and committed funding to them, we'll be incorporating in there, those into there. And this will be the largest TIP that we've ever had as a region. And so we'll be bringing this back in March to the TAC for y'all to look at the first draft of it, and I can answer a lot of questions about that then as well. But we're expecting, CapEx will be in there. A lot of large regional projects. Project Connect, as it starts to get funded, will also be probably included in this as it goes through that process. So, it's a good thing for this region. It's a big program. But I hope
How
that.
big is it for this tip? Do you know?
I'm sorry.
What is the dollar amount for this tip?
I'm still working with. I know TxDOT sent me a preliminary list on that end. I think we're looking at like $6 billion, just on the roadway side. This doesn't include the transit side. I haven't seen the transit side yet. And of course, Project Connect is huge, and so as those pieces get, go through the capital investment program, those will start getting included in there. But I know on the roadway side, we're looking at $6 to $7 billion.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions on this piece? I think, Ryan, you have still a couple more topics to cover.
Oh yeah, they're all kind of interrelated, so I can certainly run through those real quick. And then, this other thing, the next project call is something I get a question about. So I wanted to just bring up with the passage of the IIJA, we're still doing a deep dive on that to get the actual numbers, but we are intending to begin the next project call process in late 2022. So basically, October, November of this year, I think we want to kick it off formally. But what we want to do in this project call is we want to refund any remaining deferred projects. So if you're a sponsor of and you've got a deferred project still, I would encourage you to get those ready. But then we'll do a call for projects as well for a new selection of projects for STBG funding and TASA funding as well. So I'm only bringing that up now because I would ask that any sponsors, if y'all are looking to submit projects for funding, to begin identifying those projects and begin the necessary development work for a successful submission. So kind of interrelated to that, Emily, if you'll go to the next slide, we are going to be holding a project development workshop. Early summer is what we're looking for, but this is a development workshop to kind of help all local sponsors prepare transportation projects for federal funding opportunities, both opportunities from CAMPO directly through the STBG and TASA funding call, but also those discretionary grant programs that are coming through the IIJA and anything like that. So we're, it's going to include information on the federal funding process. Project scoping and cost estimation is a big one that we'll focus on, as well as engineering requirements and just what it looks like when you federalize a project. And any other aspects of project development that are critical to project implementation from the federal perspective. So we'll be sending out additional information and schedule on that soon. But I would encourage any local sponsor staff and representative consulting firms to plan on attending that. And really, that's just there's a lot of money available out there, and I think our region through the IIJA is getting more money than we've seen before. And so we're really wanting to help set up this region for success. And so this is just one piece of it. But if there's anything in particular that anybody wants to see in this workshop, please email me. We're putting the agenda together now and start reaching out to sponsors and partners to help with the workshop. But if you have any concerns or thoughts, please let me know. And finally, last thing, I just did want to talk about the IIJA a little bit. And this was presented at the policy board, and Ashby may want to jump in on this, but the bill provided $567 billion in guaranteed transportation funding over the 5 years. And Texas, as far as the formula highway programs, received close to $28 billion. And then formula transit programs, about $3.4 billion. And then there obviously a large amount is going to these discretionary grant programs. We'll go to the next slide, Emily. So in regards to those discretionary grant programs, there obviously we have the existing grant programs, but there are a variety of new competitive programs that have been created through this bill. And these are programs that seek to fund projects that address resiliency, carbon reduction, charging infrastructure, safety, congestion relief, reconnecting communities, and project development assistance, as well as a few other things. But these programs are just getting started. I know the federal programs are going through the the rulemaking process to get these started. They're optimistically looking to start funding projects within 6 months. We'll go to the next slide, Emily. And this is really the last slide, and I'll let Ashby kind of jump in on this, but this was a discussion really for the TAC and the policy board to really talk about the opportunities that are in these grant programs the regional approach basically to help this region pull in as much money as that as possible. So we're really going to kind of kick this over to the TAC for y'all to discuss this and kind of what y'all think should be the strategy for addressing or going after these funds and such things as like, do we, the supporting of local government applications for any of these programs, identifying program synergies with the, regional priorities that we've identified in the plan, whether or not these, any projects that may be submitted potentially need to be in the RTP if they aren't already, things like that. So Ashby, I don't know if you have any other comments. I know y'all had quite a discussion at the policy board, but really just kind of an open-ended discussion here. And this is the last slide I have, so you don't have to listen to me talk anymore. But if you have any questions, just really kind of something for the TAC to discuss.
So the only thing I'll add, Ryan, Emily, can you go back one slide, please? One more, please. So these numbers are, as Ryan said, they're the statewide numbers for the federal funding that we know about. That's formula-based. We still don't have the tables yet that show how much we're going to get by MPO for Category 7, nor do we have the tables yet that show how much Cap Metro will get directly from federal transit. We should have had those, honestly, a few months ago. I don't know why we don't have the tables yet, but we're continuing to press to get those numbers. As soon as we get them, we will get them out to y'all and to the board. But we do know the numbers are going up. We just don't know how much. The other thing, as Ryan alluded to, some of the conversation about how do we want to handle discretionary grants as local governments and nonprofits begin to rev up for application of those funds. We talked about some of that at the policy board meeting, and it was just the beginning of a conversation. I'm hoping that we can be at a point, TAC and policy board wise, that the board could potentially take action on some sort of policy by probably the same timeline we're looking to adopt the TIP on, April timeline. So some of the things we discussed, so some of the programs, the way they're currently written in the law, suggest that a local government or nonprofit, and in some cases even MPOs, can apply directly to USDOT, and they don't need to go through either TxDOT or, in some cases, they don't need to be coordinated with the MPO. Some of these, depending on what folks are submitting, some of them could be very significant regional projects that may or may not be in the plan and TIP. So, I want some guidance from this body and from the board on how you suggest we handle that as a region. I would prefer that we come up with something where at least we're being notified that some of these things are going forward. I'm concerned about fiscal constraint. I'm concerned about consistency with the long-range plan and TIP. And I'm concerned about performance measures. There's a bunch of things that we're supposed to be doing and that we are doing as CAMPO. But if these programs end up truly being structured where they're going around this process has been in place on the federal side since the 60s. How do we deal with that? How do we fit that into how we're processing things? So that's a conversation as we continue to get more information in the next 2 to 3 months that I would like discussion with TAC on, and hopefully a recommendation to the board about how we might proceed.
Cole, you had your hand up and then we'll go to Charlie. Go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, I really appreciate the discussion in the last few slides, because that's what we're hearing too from our policy board members about concerns about competing within ourselves and across the region for these discretionary funds. So I think the question that comes to mind is, well, how much are we competing for? And does that mean we need to get behind a single project as a region? Or is there a portfolio of projects that we can get behind as a TAC and policy board? What are the ideas about how to not compete against ourselves?
Okay. Charlie?
Well, I'm going to probably sound a little selfish after Cole, but what I'm going to ask, the 2018 project selection criteria, you said we're going to be doing a workshop coming up, in the spring. Are you not planning for any TAC input into that 2018 project selection criteria? Or are we just going to go with what we have there? If that's, I'm kind of hearing Cole talk a different tune, so I like what I'm hearing there too. But if we do have individual project criteria for these upcoming project selection, do we get a chance to take a look at it, or not? Are we fine with it?
As far as the 2018 project selection criteria, that's going to remain the same for the funds that the policy board selects. So SCBG funding and TASA. As far as the discretionary grant stuff, I don't know if we want to use something different to prioritize a project. I know the RTP also had its own process for prioritizing projects in the plan. I kind of think they're kind of separate things, I guess. My mind, and we didn't want to revisit the 2018 criteria unless the policy board wants us to, but we spent a few years putting that together, and I think also helping local sponsors plan for that, projects for that criteria. That's something that's important. So that's not going to change it unless directed to.
Okay. The one issue in the 2018 criteria that I maybe want to take a look at is, I believe, added capacity projects that were, I guess, greenfield or new alignments were not allowed. And that's just one thing that I had an issue with in 2018.
We can look at that. I think it was the modeling that was the issue on that. Not the model. I think it was the safety, because we didn't have safety numbers on a new facility. But we'll look at that and see, because we did do some greenfield, I think.
I know one of the county projects got kicked out due to being a new project, but not on an existing alignment. So. Okay.
I'll go back and take a look for sure. But that's, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Ashby, anything else, or Chad, that you want to add based upon Cole's input or Charlie's concerns?
Could I jump in quick just a minute?
Sure.
First of all, Charlie, you're right. One of the issues in the previous one was that we didn't get, or Ed, I don't know who was asking, but there were, if you didn't get points for a greenfield project didn't get any points for safety improvements because it was a greenfield project. We actually had a greenfield project that was awarded, but we had a little bit of challenge with the criteria as to how to make that work. So we've already talked to Ryan and staff about making sure that we can take a look at that, get that corrected next time around. But what I want to talk about was this other issue, Ashby, that you brought up I think it's great that you want the TAC to just kind of help sort that out, and make some recommendations, or a recommendation to the policy board about some additional funding that won't run through our standard process. But in the meantime, maybe twofold. In the meantime, if you could maybe have your staff really try to understand what that looks like and share some detail. I just think, I know even Round Rock, and I'm certainly, as a result, confident that some of the other agencies, smaller agencies, we just don't have the staff to dig into that kind of detail and understand that. And I think this group, one of the biggest benefits you can do for all of us is to help us understand what that looks like, what's out there, as we try to figure out how we can chase some of that.
Okay, Gary, I'm happy to do that. One of the things I didn't say, so this TRB committee that I'm chairing, that I thought was mostly about equity, we had our first meeting in December right after Christmas, and it turns out that part of what we're being asked to do is to help USDOT create a framework for some of the new discretionary programs, for criteria and metrics that they would use to score projects. So we're supposed to meet again next week, and I'm hopeful that I'll have a little bit more information, because that's also another thing I want to ask y'all about, and your experience and suggestions about how we might want to see the program structure. Since they're asking us, let's tell them.
That's excellent news. I think that's great news.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, Lori, this is Ed Collins. Just had a couple of comments. One is, based on some history with TxDOT, we don't want to leave them completely out of the coordination picture. In the past, they've had there's some of these discretionary programs. I guess we're asked to provide endorsement letters, and so they were trying to do that, but you receive a lot of different proposals, and they need some time to go through those. But also, they have competing projects also, so there's kind of a fine line for them to walk through to make sure that they can get endorsement letters out that may be required through the application process from that statewide agency. Yep. The other comment I might have is that I know it seems like we get a lot of money, but also we need to factor in the inflation plus also worker shortages, and maybe we may not have as much money as we think we do when we start putting the pencil to the paper.
Ed, on the first part, and we're still waiting to get more detail from USDOT on discretionary programs, on the new ones. But it appears that many of those different grant applications, processes, programs will not require a letter from TxDOT or from the MPO. Like I said, we're still trying to get clarification on some of that, but it appears that that may not be the issue that it was. Now, in my mind, it raises new issues, but that we'll have to watch that as we go forward. On the inflation, thanks for bringing that up. In both the TIP and the plan, our practice in the current TIP and the current plan, and the ones before that, is we put a 4% inflationary rate on the projects. So there probably needs to be a revisit of the highway construction index number to see what that inflationary rate is looking like. Right now and then, kind of looking back at that over time, because I don't want to just pick out one data point and say that's it. But I'm sure TxDOT has been working on some of that, so we will visit with TxDOT about that. But we've always included an inflationary rate, so in some ways we're a little bit ahead of the game.
Okay. Well, I want to echo Gary. I think you all digging into it, particularly Ashby, because You are so intimately involved in this. Whatever pre-work you can do to help guide the entities, all of us, is going to be helpful. And then I think to Cole's point, I mean, all of us have within our own, our own backyard projects that we know we're going to want, or our policymakers are going to want us to pursue. But stepping back and looking at this in that regional standpoint, like you've indicated and Cole's indicated, of what helps us as a region, certainly regional connectivity is a big thing for all of us. And even though it's not always in our backyard, it helps our backyard. So it feels like it's a kind of a tight time frame for those deep thoughts, but whatever assistance you can give us, I think it's a great tool to use TAC to help on that. So appreciate you thinking about that.
This is Bob. Got one comment here. The grants are just like earmarks, and chasing those. I would hope that all the projects would be in the plan, but past that hoop or hurdle, I would hope that we not try to put additional bureaucratic hoops or hurdles on any of us for submitting projects. A lot of these things, to be frank, when it comes down to it, get to be very political. And I would encourage all of the entities to be looking at what they think their best projects are going to be and to develop it, and to try to bring in all the money that we can into the region. And there's no telling what is going to strike a congressman or somebody at the FHWA's chords. But I would hope that we would not artificially limit our requests at the local level.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else? Comments, thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is Cole. I guess I want to hear a little bit of feedback or reaction from Ashby, because I think what what we've seen in other regions is sometimes it is a regional effort to go after one big project, and that's what brings in more money than the individual collective going after a little bit. So I understand what Bob is saying, but is it going to get us the biggest bang for our buck?
So Cole, it's at this point, it's hard to know what strategy is going to work best. I can tell you from at least looking at Tiger and a couple of the other discretionary programs that have been there in place for a little while, they have tended, and let's use Dallas-Fort Worth as an example, they have tended to award NCT-COG funding, but that was heavily coordinated through the MPO. And to Bob's point, most of all, what I'm looking for is just to know that somebody that's putting in, like Bob said, I would prefer that they were submitting for things that were already in the plan and tip, because we've already analyzed those and the board has seen those and they've gone out for public comment. So it wouldn't be a surprise to anybody, except for we would then get to swap out potentially Cat 7 for this new money, and then that Cat 7 could be freed up to go do something else. But having said all that, I can't tell anybody what to do, and if the program rules allow somebody to go directly and apply, they're going to apply. I'm just hoping for some coordination.
Okay. Well, I assume we'll have some more discussion on this next month. All right, item number 6. Nirav.
Oh, sorry. Couldn't find my unmute button. Apologize for that. So this is just to give an update to the TAC from the November briefing that we had to give an update on the dashboard. We asked for comments back within about 3 weeks after that meeting, and we received about 35 comments. And in the backup material, you'll see that we broke down our responses into 3 categories of addressed, not addressed, or potential future enhancement. And so addressed generally means that we agreed with the comment, adopted the change, and about 2/3 of those comments were in that category, mostly having to do with data points that were useful or functional changes desired, to which we had no problem with, so we incorporated them. Not addressed, there was about 10 that were in that category. Usually happen due to either a data, technical, or resource limitation. For example, one of the commenters mentioned it would be good to download or export the data, but right now the platform Power BI that we're using does not allow for external downloads at this time. So right now we're trying to figure out a workaround for that limitation. And then for future enhancement, those are just things we can't do right now, but would like to. Somebody had mentioned providing crash rates, and that's something we're working on right now by getting the VMT data from Rhino and seeing if we can incorporate it into the dashboard. So for next steps, we're going to begin public outreach through focus groups to elicit comments, and then we're going to take it to the board at the February meeting and looking for ultimate rollout in April. And then also just to let y'all know, look out for another link for the demographics dashboard, and it'll be the same scenario. We're just going to send you the link. We're not going to do a special meeting like we did last time because you'll have experience in how to navigate the dashboard this time, and just provide us your comments within about 3 weeks, and we look forward to hearing from you on that as well. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Wow, that was fast. Any questions for Nirav? Comments?
This is Cole. I do have one question. We had made a comment about including race and ethnicity as an additional breakdown, and the response provided was that CAMPO staff does not feel there's enough benefit in pursuing a race ethnicity breakdown for crashes. But I wanted to reply that I believe based on our analysis, we've found in fact that there is a disproportionate impact to minority groups. So I think this is something that's kind of a critical lens that we do need to try to include at the regional level. And perhaps if it's helpful, our Vision Zero team at the City of Austin could provide a presentation in the future just to share the type of analysis that we've found looking at crash data through different lenses, and race ethnicity being one of them.
Well, how about this, Cole? How about maybe we can you could kind of share that with me and Kimberly Horn, our consultants, and we can kind of see what you're talking about, and maybe revisit that. Would that work?
Yeah, that sounds great.
I would be real interested. I don't know if other members of the TAC would be, but an equity lens is an important thing that our council is looking at, and I understood in a way, I'm still understanding equity trying to understand equity in a different way, and so data that helps me to learn is always interesting to me. So after you talk with Nirav, we can maybe think about if there's something that you could come back and share with the group. It might help all of us.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, item number 7, some of the things we've talked about, but some of the other things, Chad, you want to touch upon?
Right. So on the formal agenda itself, items 7A and 7B actually got incorporated into Ryan's earlier presentation. So we've already covered those in depth. But I'll go over C through E here. For the project readiness for regional corridor improvement projects. So we finished our review of the proposals and the consultant selection in early November. We presented that to the board at the November TPB meeting with the team that's led by BGE receiving the highest number of points in our selection process, and the board authorizing negotiation of contract to begin negotiating contract with that firm. So we're currently in that process, and working out the scope of work and advanced funding agreements, and all those things you have when a project like this is spinning up. So we're looking to complete that in the next month or two, and hopefully start to get proper work going in March or so. And of course, as we mentioned in previous presentations on this, our first steps in this will be identifying logical segments of the identified corridors and having our consultant team develop a selection prioritization process to identify which will be studied first, which of course all will be brought to and vetted by the TAC. Then on the regional freight plan, so this is another study that we plan on procuring consultants to update our regional freight plan early this year. Our current plan is actually from 2008. So of course, a lot has changed since then. In fact, a lot has changed just in the past year or two of freight. So we think this is a real opportune time to update that. TxDOT regularly has new and updated freight plans, so we're going to be building off the TxDOT freight plan, obviously with just a focus on the CAMPO region. So, in that particular one, our internal review of everything is done. We're just really dotting the I's and about ready to post that very soon for procurement. So, if not by the end of this month, then very early in February. And then following close behind that one will be the Interchange Bottleneck study. So this is a study of interchange bottlenecks, interchanges in terms of freeway to freeway interchanges in the region and major arterial intersections as well, where connectivity is lacking or where bottlenecks are identified. So one of the first steps in this process will be for the consultant to develop a screening process for us to help identify, the subset of interchanges and intersections that we'll be looking at in the study. So at the moment, we don't have, the specific list of which areas that will be studied, which particular locations, but that will be one of the first aspects of that study, which again, all of that will be brought to TAC. And since that, as opposed to the regional freight plan, which will look at the whole region, since this one will look at specific locations within the entire region, of course, we will involve not just the agencies involved in the transportation network, but also the local government and the local cities and counties and transportation agencies involved there. That RFP is also complete internally and about to post that very shortly. So those two are going ahead really quickly. And then for item 7, I'll hand it back over to Nirav. Item 7F.
Thanks, Chad. So for the Tdm Subcommittee, we've already had one meeting, which Gary had already updated the TAC on. The next meeting I anticipate being sometime in mid-February, between the policy board meeting and the next TAC meeting. And there's just hadn't been a whole lot to report because after our first meeting, the holiday season happened and there's not a whole lot happened. But we'll have our next meeting, and I expect to send out a doodle poll to the TAC subcommittee members either today or tomorrow to get pin down that next meeting date.
Wow, that's a lot. So
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I've heard just for me and maybe the rest of the TAC members to help us understand, our role in this and when things are coming back, what I've heard in this meeting is we're going to provide some input on a policy regarding the tip, and that's going to be in the next couple months. And then, as we flesh out more information, and that's associated with what are we calling it? The ILJA funding. And then we're going to have the corridor projects segments coming in the next March, so a few months there. And then on the regional freight study, is that just something that will come to the TAC to review? And what's the TAC's role in the regional freight study? Just providing some technical review, or what would we do there?
Yeah, so on that one, we will have a steering committee like we do on major regional projects, and then we'll ask for participants in that, and then obviously bring back regular updates at milestone and benchmark moments in that.
Okay, and is that the same thing on the bottleneck study, but the steering committee would be broader than just the TAC? It would also involve the other entities that you talked about, Chad?
Yeah, so. That's correct. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
And both, yeah.
okay, go ahead. You were saying both.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, these are also, just one other thing I wanted to mention is that these are similar to the studies that we did leading up to the current RTP. So they're really meant to, you see in the UPWP, these are between 200 and 250K. So these aren't studies where we're going to be able to get into, environmental clearance or engineering design of interchange locations, for example, but it tees up that next round of projects for consideration for the next RTP, for future culture projects and tips and things like that. So that's really, the intention here is to work with the region to get, similar to the corridor studies, getting those next round of corridors available. Similar thing with freight and bottlenecks.
Okay. Yes, definitely sounds busy and lots for us to do. And then I had one other question on the demographics dashboard. Is that going to help us kind of go back and QC and look at some of the questions that came out of last year, where maybe down on the TAS level there may have been local questions about demographics. What will that be helping us look at, Nirav?
We're using the Census Bureau's ACS data, or American Community Survey data, at the tract level and the county level for that. So it's not using the same data sources. Well, it's not exactly the same as what was used for the model.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so for that, there'll be a variety of things to look at. Just things like obviously demographics in terms of race and gender, but housing characteristics, income characteristics, and mobility characteristics. There's a whole lot to chew over at the tract level and the county level.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions on all of this coming up?
This goal, it would be nice to have this in a calendar.
Yeah.
This is Bob. I'd also like to have information regarding what is the plan for forming or appointing the oversight committees for these efforts.
One additional question, Chad, did you say the funding levels on those two studies are, did you say 250K for both? Or not for both?
Right. The is actually 200 and Interchange is 250.
Okay. And the limiting
25.
criteria on that interchange bottleneck study is that one of the facilities has to be on the state system. Is that, you wouldn't have two off system, local roadways that could be looked at.
I
Got it.
don't recall those showing up, but I would have to go back and look.
Yeah, we really don't. We really do not anticipate that because we're looking at that. We're looking at that level of sort of surface highway that's not limited access, but that's just below the level in terms of regional connectivity and volume and things like that. Really, it's just below that level of limited access facility, and our review of that, and so what we're putting in the RFP is that those are on-system facilities, just because that's based on the regional arterials concept inventory, our review of it for this particular RFP and developing the RTP and things like that. The examples that we've identified, it's where either on-system roadways that are not freeways and tollways cross one another or cross freeway and tollway.
So it's not going to be really a ask from local jurisdictions to submit. It's going to be more of we know where these probably are and going to take a look at them.
Right. It's going to be more of the higher volume, volume on-system interchanges. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Chad, is there at least looking at the next 6 months, is there a calendar that we could get that would kind of help us remember what all we've got coming forward on us and be better prepared?
There absolutely is. There's a format that I think we've shared with this. Yeah, I think we've shared with this committee before, at least once, and we've shared it with the board as well. So we'll definitely update that and add some of these things that are coming down the pike real quick, and share that with the committee.
Okay.
And Bob, as part of that calendar, we'll put the information that you asked for about how the steering committees will be formed.
All right, thanks for that. Good, thank you for those comments. All right, so the policy board meeting is on Valentine's Day, so you guys are all going to give them roses and chocolates and things like that, I guess.
That's the plan.
And then our next tech meeting is February 28th. So, Ryan, could you also send us out your PowerPoint? Sometimes you have things on the PowerPoint that are a little presented in a slightly different way than the backup that are very helpful. So if you would send that along too.
Absolutely, we can certainly do that.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All right. I say don't everybody rush at once. All right. I second it. So thank you very much for your participation. And we'll see you on the 28th if we don't see you on Valentine's Day. Bye-bye.
Lori, see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lori.